Hi, this is Ashish from Interview Kickstart, and welcome to the 8th module of the Frontend System Design course. In this module, I'm going to be demonstrating how to use React's Context API to manage state in your application, and hopefully you'll see how unobtrusive this solution is as compared to using Redux. So let's get on with it. React Context API is the native implementation of Flux within React. This API allows setting of a state context at a given point in a visual hierarchy and access of that context from any of the child components via functions called hooks. This concept is abstract and appealing as it is minimal in nature, and it removes any requirement of proxying the state through intermediate parents via property passing. Intermediate parents are able to extend or alter any of the existing context that they inherit from their ancestors. This allows the descendants to obtain the final merged properties of context at their level. In order to use the React Context API in your project, the first step is to create a context API file. In this file, we create a context using React's Create Context API and pass in an initial set of parameters which serves as an initial value for your context. In the example here, we are trying to initialize a theme by setting blue as the initial color for our theme. The second step is to author a provider function or a container that wraps and overrides the context and provides it to your visual tree. In this example, we've authored a theme container that takes the initial set of properties and wraps them into a theme context.provider and sets the value for the context. It is important to note that the properties that are passed to the theme container must contain a set of children such that the properties are accessible in the descendants of that children tree. The final step is to expose a hook that allows the consumers of your API, aka any of the components in your visual tree, to fetch this context value at any component level. In the example here, we're using the useContext function from React, passing in our theme context to retrieve the value of context at a particular level in the visual tree. In order to use the React context in your visual tree, you just have to wrap your visual tree within the context container that we created in the previous step. In order to retrieve the value of the React context within your own component, all you have to do is to import the hook that we have defined in the previous step and invoke it within your own component. Then you can use the values from that context in your own visual trees. Sometimes it is not only sufficient to read values from React Context API, but also to alter the state at a given point in your subtree. In order to do that, we can expose a setter function as a property from our React context and use React's useState hook to remember the property as well as to update the property using the setter of the useState. In this example below, we've used this useState to initialize the color property that we obtain from our props as an initial value. The useState returns a pair of the current value of the property as well as a method to update the property at any given time. We now add a set color to our theme context to update the color and wire it with the set color that is returned via useState. Any of the intermediate nodes can now use our hook to access set color and then pass in a different color to reflect that in its own subtree. Continuing our discussion, in the example here, we are invoking useTheme hook that we have defined before to access both the current color as well as a setter that updates the color for the subtree rooted at this component. Then we have defined a button that alters the color by invoking the set color for this entire visual subtree. Recapping our discussion, let's take a look at a logical subtree in this theming example. We may have an application level component that wraps its visual subtree within the context provider. The context provider can be initialized with default theming properties and may use some intermediate nodes such as divs to wrap context-aware or theming-aware elements. These theming-aware elements can use custom hooks to obtain the context at their own subtree and use those property values for their own use case. Let's take a look at some of the applications of React Context API in the real world. This API can be used to set or override an application theme, perform internationalization and localization, including multi-language support in our applications, manage user authentication and logged-in user information within our system, or implement a routing library that, depending on the path, initializes a context for the entire application. In general, we can manage the global state of any application using the React Context API. In order to illustrate the working of React Context API, I will illustrate a demo that highlights how to use React Context API to provide a theming support in our application. I will perform this demo online within Code Sandbox. All right, so I'm in my Code Sandbox and I'm ready to create my new React project. So I'm going to create a new sandbox and I am going to pick a React template. And this should give me a new React project. And once I have this, I'm going to create new context API file. And I'm going to call it theme.js. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import certain things from React. And they involve create context and use context. And then the very first step is to create my theme context using the create context API and pass in some default value for color. Let's pass maybe blue. And then we're going to expose a hook called use theme that basically retrieves the value of a context using the use context API, passing in our theme context. Finally, we're going to export another function called theme container that takes in some properties. And then it retrieves color as one of the properties and children as another property from the props. And it returns the theme context dot provider, and it passes in certain values. So the value is in our case color, and then we pass the children as the visual subtree of this. Okay, that concludes our theming API file. And now I'm going to go ahead and create a button that uses the theme. All right, so right here in my application, or actually, let's just do this. I'm going to create a new button component, new file, and I'm going to call it themed button.jsx. And right here, I'm going to import React from React, and let me then simply export this component. And what this button does, it needs to use this custom hook. So I'm going to import our custom hook from theme, which was called use theme. So I'm going to retrieve the color from this theme, and then I'm going to return a button, setting the style of the button to be background color to be color. And then I can take in some props, and these are button props, let's say. And the proper way to do that would be to apply the props to this button. So I'm going to do children and other props, and I'm going to fish it from props. And the reason I'm doing it is I want to have children right here in the button, and I want to apply properties for the button at the other props level. Now you might see that we are actually looking at the style here. So I might, the other props might specify some other styles that kind of can override this color. So style, let's fish out style and other props from other props or an empty object. So we want to call this guy as other styles. And so we can create this styles on our side by simply merging the background color with the other styles. And the way we would want to do that is we want to use a spread operator using other styles, or if other styles are not available, then we want to use just a empty object. And right here, we want to use other props so that we don't override the styles in any way. Right. Okay, so once we've done that, let's put this component on our app. So I'm going to go back here and import my themed button. And I'm going to simply employ it in my visual tree, and you can see there is something created, but it's not visible because I have no text within it, no children. So themed button. And let's try setting some style here. I'm using explicit styles, but I think in real world you would want to use some CSS elements here. But anyways, I'm going to use some color right here. So now our theme is being merging the foreground color with the background color. All right, so what I want to do is I want to override or change the style. So I'm going to create another button, and we're going to change the style. Say change style. And of course, it needs to be an HTML button, right? And the way we want to do it is we want to first expose a setter from our theme. So I'm going to go back here, and what I'm going to do is import useState from React. And then I'm going to be using current color and set color. And I'm going to say useState props.color. Actually, we can do something like this. I'm going to remove and use color here. And this is a set color. And within the values, in addition to color, I'm going to also pass in set color. All right. And back in our application, what I could do here is when I click my second button, we can switch the state. And how do we do that? Well, to begin with, we first want to wrap this app in the theme context container, which we haven't done yet. So I'm going to import that container from my theme, which is this container, and I'm going to just wrap my app in this theme. All right. I can also pass in like an initial value for my theme color. So as you can see, if I change it to red, it basically applies that color on the background. And now I can use the hook to retrieve that setter. I'm going to import this from theme, and I'm going to use theme. And right here, I'm going to say, give me the set color after invocation of use theme. Right. And let's say every time we click on this, we want to set the color to be green. So let's try doing that. I'm going to click on this, and you can see that the green color is reflected here. All right, so we saw that this works because, and this works globally, by the way, under that theme container. We can have nested theme containers that may more specifically specify a set of overridden values at that subtree. And we can actually see it here. So let's just use another theme container here by introducing yet another component just to illustrate that. So I'm going to create just another hierarchy. Let's call this function fake container, some sort. And right here, I'm going to basically create another theme container. And I'm going to pass in a color of blue, green, yellow. And I'm going to place this change style over here. And I'm going to use my hook here, and right here I'm going to say fake container. All right, and I'm going to create another theme button within this container. All right, and I'm going to say this is nested theme container. So you can see that this is a top level theme container, and then there is a second level of theme container, and we can just put it in a div just for better visual delineation. So everything right here is included in the top level container, and then everything on the second line is within a more specific theme container. And you can see that we have green and yellow as different initial values. We can see that this is still changing the top container to green. And why was that? That was because this use theme is applying to a parent container, which is not this theme container. It was actually a container that was set out as a parent of this app, context properties. So in order to fix that, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to take out the theme container from here and set it as a parent of this fake container, right? So now if we change the style, it gets applied to a more specific state. So hopefully we can learn from this and ensure that we have proper nesting of theme containers or context containers as we are using setters to set states at specific subtrees in our visual hierarchy. Hopefully, at the end of this module, you'll be able to appreciate the unobtrusive nature of React's context API, as opposed to plumbing Redux separately into your React application. This is Ashish signing off from Interview Kickstart.
Want to become a software engineer at Google? You can, like thousands of our students. You just need to learn from those who've already cleared FANG interviews. At Interview Kickstart, our interview prep courses are developed and taught live by 150 plus instructors from Tier 1 companies like Google and Facebook. Our courses are tailored to help you crack software engineering domain interviews, including back-end, full stack, machine learning, embedded systems, data science, and more. To learn more, book your free webinar slot today